When healing from narcissistic abuse, a simple subject like happiness becomes more complex than perhaps it should be. In this video, I'm going to tell you some things that are rarely talked about, and that is the mistrust of happiness, the fear around it, and perhaps the lack of even knowing what true happiness is after a relationship with a narcissist. This might be difficult for people to comprehend because they don't understand the intricacies of this unique journey and why it requires so much patience and compassion. When you've experienced numerous types of deceptions, ongoing manipulation, and betrayals, it becomes difficult to emotionally find your bearings. You question whether you ever were happy. If it was all based on a lie, how can you trust yourself to know what happiness is and whether it'll last? So there's a part of us that remains guarded. You become cautious regarding happiness. We may even notice ourselves sabotaging our own happiness in order to try and protect our hearts from being exploited again. Hi, I'm Joanna Kujath. I'm a transformational mentor and the author of Unveiling the Narcissist. I help highly empathetic and intelligent people free themselves from controlling relationships. I help them go from chaos and uncertainty to confidence, clarity, and inner peace. My particular approach is to help you come to terms with this heart-wrenching subject, lovingly, with wisdom, emotional intelligence, and grace. Narcissists want us to be dependent on them for everything: money, survival, emotional well-being. They even want to control access to our own inner state by making arrogant statements about how we should be feeling, what we should be happy about. It's interesting to observe how they commonly remark on how we should be happy about being in relationship with them. But that's not how we feel. This creates a lot of confusion about what happiness actually is, especially when they isolate you and you have no other input other than their skewed view of life. We begin to mistrust and properly discern certain emotions. When you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, emotions, especially strong emotions, are used like levers to keep you dysregulated, to the point where you don't trust your own emotions, thoughts, and feelings. And dysfunctional families set a certain emotional climate of mistrust, apprehension, and uncertainty. Perhaps if you were raised by a narcissistic mother or narcissistic father, there's a reversal of associating certain emotions. For example, you genuinely feel happy because you did something at school. You naturally want to share that, but you're shut down by them telling you to tone it down, stop showing off, or our expression of happiness is completely ignored. That minimization of good feelings isn't supported or encouraged, or it's actively discouraged. We eventually associate the happiness of achieving something, developing or creating something, we associate it with a type of emotional flatness, and then wonder why we question what actually makes us happy. When we were never lovingly guided about how to discover that. And narcissists are very serious. So we grow up feeling awkward around spontaneity, fun, or play. If you want to share with your narcissistic mother, I won a trophy in a sporting event, and her response is, you could have got the gold instead of the silver. You should have got 10 out of 10 instead of just 9. That type of emotional cutting you down, that carries on into our adult life because we slowly become disconnected from what happiness, goodness, or achievement actually is meant to feel like. Our brain is programmed not to have a natural dopamine hit, which is the pleasure hormone that's released when we've reached a goal. It's that rush of great feeling sensations. It's how we build our inner reserve, our self worth, what we feel good about. This is what healthy families encourage in their children. They demonstrate pleasure about their children's success. They are happy because you've shared something that you're happy about. Unfortunately, with narcissists, your success is seen as a threat because they are pathologically competitive, even with their own children. It's like there's not enough happiness to go around. The experience of happiness becomes complex for people with this type of history. Happiness should be simple and not a complicated topic, let alone one you can only think about intellectually, but struggle to actually experience. This is a result of trauma and due to ongoing emotional manipulation. That's why it's essential that you now become very mindful of the company you keep and become aware of the certain impact environments can have, because we attune to certain people and places. Just like misery loves company, joy and laughter is contagious too. Narcissists despise happiness and are envious of other people being happy. So they'll shut you down with inappropriate comments like, that won't last. And they'll plant seeds of distrust like, you'd better be careful because, and then they associate your happiness with someone else's loss or tragedy. So they'll attach your happiness with whichever paranoid delusion they've got running in their own mind. These are like mind viruses that we catch that steal our joy, happiness, and sense of achievement. We begin to associate happiness with a foreboding suspicion. There may even be a fear of achieving happiness because we're afraid we'll lose it. So we avoid having it at all. Or we may wonder why we notice ourselves feeling skeptical about other people's happiness. These are the toxic seeds that were planted in our mind that cloud our ability to connect and share intimate, joyous moments with others. It's a sabotage of your ability to be happy. I'm articulating this to hopefully clear some of that ongoing confusion you might have, or that self criticism that you might have about why it's so difficult to be happy. Dysfunctional families magnify negative emotions. They constantly revolve around fear, talk about hatred, jealousy, demonstrate anger, rage, hypercriticism. They highlight failure, and passive aggressivity festers silently. And there's virtually no acknowledgement of positive feelings such as joy, wonderment, serenity, awe, inspiration, satisfaction, cheerfulness. Most of us have no idea of what these wonderful feelings actually are. It thus becomes our job to get familiar with these and begin to practice, notice, and rebuild those sensations within our inner domain. When you hear it this clearly articulated, I hope you can extend some compassion towards yourself and can imagine why it's so difficult for all of us to feel happy, let alone trust happiness and not be afraid of losing it if we've experienced it so sporadically and it was so short lived. We must relearn and rewire our brain by acknowledging every small success, every tiny win. If we don't, we will continue to mistrust life and deep down think, what's the point? This is a very destructive programming, which becomes our responsibility to break because it will control the rest of our life. And you'll wonder why you still feel bound by some invisible string. My advice regarding what to do if you mistrust happiness is to do an internal inventory regarding this. And it may present slightly different in your situation. So it's important for you to get familiar with what triggers that inner narrative, that invisible attachment to that past misery. You may not even be conscious of it, may not even have words for it. It's just an icky sensation, an uncomfortable, mistrustful feeling around happiness. Maybe you actually believe that you could never be happy. Maybe you've given up on happiness because you associate it with that awful feeling of emptiness. Maybe you've tried to fake happiness to fit in for too long, but you've never genuinely felt what it's like to be happy. So I encourage you to question everything about that programming because that's all it is. It's not you, it's the result of being in a toxic environment. It poisoned your mind, your ability to know and trust emotions. It will require unraveling. But your freedom from this is the true prize. Ask yourself, what's your definition of happiness? And get very clear. Avoid generalizations. Write it down. Get it out of your head. Use your imagination to feel it within your body. Immerse yourself by watching good feeling movies, reading heartwarming books, and spend time with happy people. Why not initiate conversations regarding happiness instead of misery and complaining? Ask someone what makes them happy and watch their face light up. Their description of what makes them happy can be infectious, and their feelings can be amplified within us. And if you can't find this type of company that's uplifting, joyous, focuses on happiness, then it's better to be alone. I've learned to protect my happiness and just disengage in miserable conversations or topics that amplify problems instead of solutions. We have to teach ourselves to be happy simply because it's for our own good and it attracts more goodness. And we also have to stop expecting it from others. If you can remain content, calm, and genuinely okay with no matter what, that's a sign of true emotional mastery. That's a worthwhile goal that will serve you for life.